Hello, my friends. I'm so happy to be with you today. Today, I have the honor and privilege of introducing you to Ashley O'Neill. She is a family nurse practitioner. She is a mom. She is a widower. And she is also the connector and the brains and the beauty and all of the things behind It's a NICU World, which you can find on Instagram. She also has her own podcast called Ask a NICU Mama Podcast 2024, which you can find wherever you listen to podcasts or also on Instagram. I have to say, meeting and talking with Ashley, she has been through, hard doesn't begin to describe what it's like to, during a 4-year span, bury a son, give birth to a micro-preemie, and also lose your husband. And she comes out and says that she's a fighter, and I can't think of a better word to describe her. I'm so honored to get to interview her and to share all of the amazing things that she's doing to make this world a better place, despite all that she has been through and all she has come through. Thank you so much for being here with me, Ashley. Hello, my friends. Welcome to Child Life on Call. This podcast is a safe place for parents to share their stories about what it's like to have a child that has a medical experience, diagnosis, disease, and or everything in between. We know there's power in sharing stories, and that power multiplies when you can listen to other parents who have walked a similar path to yours. Giving and getting advice is great, but hearing how another parent navigates the complexities and nuances of healthcare is even better. As a child life specialist, my role is to support, validate, and provide emotionally safe spaces for kids and their families, and I am so honored to be on this journey with you. In addition to parent stories, we sprinkle in some expert episodes every now and again that have content for both parents and professionals in the field of healthcare, all with the mission to empower parents to be confident advocates and partners with the care team during healthcare experiences. We're so glad you're here.
Hi, my name is Ashley O'Neill. Professionally, I am a family nurse practitioner for 5 years. Prior to switching over, I was a floor nurse for like 7 years. I'm originally from Michigan. I moved to Southern Maryland 11 years ago. My late husband was an engineer on the naval base down here, so he dragged me here. So I have a 5-year-old son, my Colin. He was born at 25 weeks gestation, spent 183 days or 6 months in the NICU. Some of the darkest days of my life. Especially was harder because I transitioned back to work while he was still in the NICU. So like 2 months into a 6-month stay. And I work in family practice. So going to work, seeing a very healthy baby that's the same age as my baby, and then having to, after seeing this patient, go sit at my desk and call the NICU while I'm pumping.
Ooh.
Hard experience, to say the least. And then 3 years before my Colin was born, I had my eldest son. He was born at 21 weeks gestation, died shortly after birth because at that time, still some hospitals now, they don't provide any saving measures for babies born that late. So yeah, and then when my son was 13 months, my husband passed away unexpectedly. And so that was right in the midst of COVID. So it's trying to juggle suddenly becoming a single mom, working full time with a kid who has special needs have been challenging. But kind of like in the midst of all of that trauma, I did have a period where I was like, I don't think I realized how depressed I was. Like the whole world was like just black.
Right.
It's like, it's COVID. You can't go anywhere. So even it's bad enough to have experienced all those things, but then to be stuck in your house for 3 months, like, it's like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And so I decided I was going to write a book about Colin's NICU stay. It like came to my mind like right when he was first discharged from like the NICU. And I was thought, when life settles down, I'll take care of this.
Right.
And then life kept happening. And then eventually I was like, let me just do it, which is why I started sharing our story on like Instagram, just trying to find a way to connect to other families who have been through what I've been through. And then being able to share some of the tips that I had to struggle to find on my own. Mm. So my son just turned 5. He is doing things that we originally told that he would never be able to do. Like I was told he'd never be able to like walk, talk, eat, see. Some of the doctors didn't even think he would be able to like handle his own secretions on his own. So he's 5. Do you want me to keep going? I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just enthralled. I'm thinking of questions. So one of my first questions is, do you have a name for your eldest son?
His name is Vincent Carter O'Neill.
Vincent Carter. Is it Vincent, V-I-N?
V-I-N-S-O-N.
Vinson. Okay. So Vincent, just so I can kind of get my bearings right, Vincent and Colin. I want you to keep going. Yeah. Keep going with how you feel. I have so many questions kind of just about you being in the medical field, being thrust into it, knowing a lot of what you were seeing. And I was just having this conversation an hour ago with a social worker. And it's one of those things when you're a mom or you're a parent in that medical world and something happens to you or your child or your family member, you don't really put on your MP hat. You've got your mom, wife hat going on, and you need those other support people around you to do their roles really well because you need all the support you can get.
But it was hard because it's like, I don't know enough to like save him, but I knew too much that I couldn't be like naive.
Right.
And so it's like, I'm sitting here like holding my baby, looking at all the numbers, like, oh my goodness, this is not good.
Yeah. So take us back to, I think, when Colin was born and you said 183 days in the NICU, it's always so telling to me, moms who have had NICU experiences, especially the way that you remember numbers, like numbers that you remember, whether it's like a weight or time or a date or an O2 or whatever it is, the numbers that stick in your head from that experience, they don't go away. There's some of those like milestone numbers that stay with you. What was it like for you with Colin, especially right after he was born and you were there in the NICU with him? What did you do to get through, to step by step walk into the hospital, get back home, pump? How did you get through it?
Well, he was born at a small community hospital where they don't even really have a nursery. And so they were not able to like intubate him originally. So they bagged my baby for an hour until the flight team came. And then he was flown to a hospital that's 2 hours away from me. And so I had an emergency C-section. And so they still had to get clearance from the insurance to like transfer me. So I didn't actually follow up to the day following Colin. So then by the time I got to the other hospital, we'll back up. So they give you the number that you call the NICU. And so I'm like calling all nervous. And it's like, well, Mom, next time you call, you're going to have to give me this number. I was like, if you don't tell me about my baby.
Yes, for sure.
But that nurse ended up being like one of my favorites. But so like the next day, I get settled in my room and I'm like walking because I'm going to walk. I'm walking and waddling to like the NICU. And then I peer over and I see a lady at the incubator with Colin. And I'm so nervous to like peek in to see like what's going to greet me.
Right.
So I'm like peering in. I'm just like, he's moving. And then the lady, I later found out she was like the occupational therapist, who I still love 5 years later. But that was like my first thing. I was like, he's moving. And so prior to him being transferred, the flight team brought him in the room to like meet me in that little portable incubator.
Yes.
My initial thought was my son's going to die. So he was 25 weeker, 1.5 pounds. So fragile. And I'm just like, this doesn't look good. And then my husband had already like brought in like the photos of them like in between bagging him. And he just looked so frail.
Yeah.
And for me, death was a reality because my oldest son had died. So I'm just like, we're going to do this again. So when I saw him moving in the incubator, I was like, okay, we might be all right.
Yeah. That like first, because you didn't know what you were going to see really or what to expect. And one of the things you wrote to me in that form that you filled out is you said, I'm a fighter. And that's something that you discovered about yourself. And clearly Colin is too, because it takes a lot for a 25 weeker to fight and to move and all of that.
And he was extubated. He extubated himself like 3-4 times while he was in the NICU. Like I came in one day and he's on his belly. I was like, how is he on his belly? And he looked like he was giving me a thumbs up. He had on his little Billy Rubin lights on. And I was like, why isn't he intubated? They was like, oh, he extubated himself. We're going to give him a chance. He looked so proud of himself.
Wait, that's so funny. So I had the chance to work in a NICU here in North Austin. And one of my favorite things to do with families, especially with the young, was to celebrate those milestones where babies really show their personality, like extubating myself, taking out my NG tube. And so we would like print out the, like, I extubated myself on this date. And it's like, it's so true because it's like, this is my son. This is my daughter. They are doing the things, like they are fighting. They are getting through. They are spunky. Were you beginning to feel that bond with him when you saw him, or did it take some time for you?
I feel like it was like, this is my baby. This is my baby. So I'm going to say yes, but I didn't actually get to hold him until he was 10 days old.
Okay.
And by then we had already learned that he had like bilateral brain bleeds, 3 and 4. I think at the time we already knew he had like hydrocephalus. And so the nurse was like, Mom, it's time for you to hold your baby. I was like, is it gonna make the brain bleeds worse? Like, she's like, Mom, hold your baby. Your baby needs you and you don't need your baby. So then like I held him. I was like, okay, this is home.
Yeah. No easy feat to probably get Colin from the incubator to you. Lots of people around, lots of tubes and wires. But once you felt him on your chest, you had that moment.
Yeah.
Mm.
Because prior to that, you just do like with the hand hug or let him grip your fingers and he would hold on tight. He was just letting me know, I'm here, mama.
Yeah. How did you become Colin's advocate in the NICU? Did it take you some time to find your voice?
Well, I started off like every day I would like section like my notebook into a section. So that's exactly how I knew like which day of life, 1, 2, 3, the date, the time, the plan of care, the medicine. I don't know if that's the nurse in me. Like what is respirations like? So sometimes like I made sure I was at rounds every day. So I would like ask my questions. And then sometimes like they're looking at the computer, looking for numbers or whatever they're looking for. And I was like, well, this day at this time, he said this then, you know. And then my husband was an engineer. So he was like searching stuff. You need to ask him about this. You need to ask him about that. And because by then after the first 2 weeks, he had transitioned back to work.
Okay. Oof.
So I think it kind of like my ability to advocate with him increased as time progressed. Because after you've been there for so long, it's just like, you're going to listen to me.
Yeah. You're like, I know how he likes to have this done and that done.
And I would write like little signs like, my name is Colin Xavier, and these are the things that I like. And I actually just found a photo of it the other day. Like, I like my milk swab. I love taking photos. My mom left a camera under my bed, so please take a photo with me. I love story time. My mom left books under, so I would do like a bunch of things like that. So the staff would kind of get to know Colin and his wants. And then I wrote a sign on an index card that says, hey, you, do you know that you're looking at a miracle? And so that the staff would like not look at him as a number, but as a human. And the funny thing is like years later, we go back to the NICU and the doctors are amazed because they didn't think Colin was going to be able to do a tenth of what he's doing. And it's like, Mom, you knew it. You said he was a miracle. You had it on that card.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I love that you put both information for the staff to see because you know him best and you wrote it down. And it can be kind of hard to find your voice, even as a medical provider who knows what's going on because you're essentially not in your environment. You're not in kind of where your expertise is. You're somewhere else. So is this the NICU reunion that you talk about? Do you go back and kind of see your team or what does your NICU do for those? Is that what you were kind of referring to when you saw the doctors?
No, so we do attend the yearly NICU reunions, but that's every September. But the physical therapy, there's physical therapists that we still follow with, and then a lot of our specialists are still at that hospital. So a lot of times they'll still let me go into like the family lounge if I need time to like either change Colin or fix formula stuff for his G-tube feeds and stuff. So we'll sneak in there. Like, so they had this new state-of-the-art family lounge that was finished like after we left. So I never got a chance to enjoy it as an actual patient there, but I've used it plenty of times since.
Oh, that's so cool. Wait, so what is it? Can you explain it?
Oh, so they just renovated the family lounge. So there's like a nice little area where they have like snacks and like ample seating for everyone, better bathrooms. There's like laundry, like a nice breastfeeding room. When I was there, we were like in a corner somewhere. It was like a small room, but you could tell they were doing like renovations. And so now you can actually, you know, there's just like a nice little space to kind of make you more comfortable. Because we used to be like a bunch of, because they'll kick you out during like change of shift. And so there'd be like 20 people in like this little bitty room just looking at each other because we didn't have anywhere to go.
Waiting to go back in. So that's my favorite thing because I think those little things where you have space within the hospital to feel comfortable are so important. So I love hearing your favorite parts of what a family room should include. Like whether it's just like a charging station with all different types of chargers or a place to go get snacks or like something comfortable, like just something that doesn't feel that medical. And it's also an opportunity for you to meet other families that are, you know, you're at the hand washing station with all the time when you check in.
So we were actually in an open bay NICU, so we got to meet everybody all the time anyway.
Were you like, they're beeping over there, like he doesn't like it over there, like you got to know
And I
everybody?
would be I stayed there for like the first 2 months. So I knew like all the babies' first names. Oh, no, their last names too, because I think on the incubator, they only had their first names. And I was like, oh, that's so-and-so. They've been here for this long. I was like, I'm here too long.
Yeah. And you'd probably watch new parents come in and be like, you're one of us now.
But I also got to see all of the people leave. I was like, you only been here for 2 days. Like,
I
gone
know.
already? We were in, so I call it 25-weeker rows. When we first got there was this little row in the middle, like 6 to 8 babies, all 25-weekers. And we sat in that same spot and I watched everybody leave and Colin and I are still there. And I'm just, one day I got mad. I was like, you guys need to move me. I'm tired of being in this spot. Just because it was a window bed that just opened up. And so I came back the next day. They had moved us, but they didn't even move us by the window. So I was mad. I was like, you could have left me where I was.
Wait, that's so funny. Oh, it's so true. It's so true. Those nuances of the NICU. How has being an MP and being Colin's mom kind of led you to the spot that you're in right now? Did you ever picture yourself being somebody who would kind of share openly on social media or sharing on a podcast or trying to find resources for others? How do you think that path has gotten you here?
It actually started after my first son died. So I started like a blog. It's called like On the Journey to Healing. And I would share like that experience of grieving the loss of my child. And then I would have other people kind of share their stories on the blog. Yeah. And then I did that for a while. And I had joined like this organization called Footprints for Faith. And we like raised money to donate like a cuddle cot to that local hospital. Because I knew how it felt to not be able to hold your baby after they, passed away for a significant amount of time. And so that kind of put me on the trajectory, I would say. And then when I was pregnant with Colin, I was actually working on material to like pregnancy after loss. And then here he comes 25 weeks. I was like, never mind. So,
yeah.
So I threw all of that away. And then once I decided like I wanted to write the book, I was like, well, who am I going to sell the book to? I need to start sharing. And so I started like the Instagram. And so then I started sharing more and more. And then I would have families ask questions and be like, they'll tell me like they resonated with something. And then backing up a little bit, when I was in the NICU, I joined every single Facebook group I can find, everything that I can find that kind of should let me know that life could be possible with someone in Colin's shoes. And I share this story a lot, but I found this picture of this little 3-year-old girl who was missing like significant brain tissue, had seizures, like all of this stuff. She was smiling. Her mom says, yes, she has this, but she's happy, she's thriving, she loves life. And I screenshotted that little girl and I would be in the NICU holding my baby crying, looking at this stranger girl. I'm like,
yeah.
And so I always kind of wanted to be that for someone else. Mm-hmm. And that mom probably doesn't even know who I am.
Yeah.
5 years later, like I think about that little girl all the time.
Oh, that brings tears to my eyes. Yeah. Because you never know who's going to come across and it's just going to change everything. That picture did for you. Wow. That's really powerful.
And then I had started just like, so my podcast is Ask the NICU Mama, but I had started off as like a blog, kind of sharing my story. And then I would email them questions and they would ask it, like answer the questions, I should say. And so it kind of started from there to the podcast. And I was like, something was like, you should probably start one to give people a voice. And I was like, who's going to want to listen to that?
I know a lot of people. Yeah.
And then I was not expecting the feedback that I got.
Yeah. So, what do you think are some of the questions you get asked the most that you find yourself answering a lot?
Sometimes it's like insurance questions, like how to navigate, how to get this equipment, what kind of grant programs, stuff like that. That's a lot. And then what does life kind of look like for, so Colin has bilateral brain bleeds, hydrocephalus. He's G-tube dependent. He's nonverbal, uses a communication device. Prior to this last surgery, he can ambulate with a walker, but primarily like uses a wheelchair, transferring to and from school. So a lot of times people just want to know, what does life look like? How do you balance? Mm-hmm. How do you essentially provide great care to a kid with similar medical issues?
Yeah. And so you just kind of share your day-to-day things that have worked for you, things you've tried, probably didn't work. Mm-hmm. And then all of that, you're navigating the loss of your husband too, which I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
I'm so sorry. You've gone through a lot in 4 years and now you're giving back to others. something tells me that you have amazing parents, or maybe a community or people around you that lifted you up in tough times. And are you trying to do that for others?
Yeah, I had a tribe of sometimes random strangers. Like I didn't even know one of my neighbors. She found out my husband died. She went and bought everybody like dinner in the house.
Wow.
It's just like everything that I could have needed just appeared at my door. Like, so it's one thing for like your husband to die, and it's another thing to be like left with like nothing. And everything that I've ever needed and Colin's ever needed has just shown up magically. Like we haven't struggled for anything. We hadn't needed anything. And so it's like, who am I not to give back to help the next person?
Have you found any other families navigating being a widow or widower with a child with autism? Is there anybody in your community that you've and what I'm asking is that a lot of families tell me that sometimes they'll put like the most random hashtag on Instagram and they'll click it and they'll find other people who have gone through something similar.
Kind of towards like the beginning of my NICU journey, I found, not my NICU journey, like kind of sharing my story, I found another mom who was a widow, daughter was like a micro preemie, had several like miscarriages. And I like IM'd her, DM'd her, I was like, I feel like you see me. Like,
yeah, I love that you said I am, because that means you're an elder millennial like me when we used to I am each other. Right? Do you remember what your screen name was?
Probably like a kankakee. So it means to know her is to love her.
Oh, I love that. Do you know what mine was? Miss WNBA 9. And I'm 5'3". Okay. And my grandfather was like, you're never going to make it to the WNBA. What? Thanks, Grandpa. Anyway, it's that social connection with people on the other side of the world that you would never know before. And I, for one, am grateful that as a child life specialist, I can list you as a resource now for other NICU families who are navigating grief and loss. I have a friend who's a child life specialist, and I say a friend, like I've never met her in real life, but we're very, very good friends on Instagram. And she's kids grief support. And she lost her baby at a similar gestation. I think it was her third child. And she has a wealth of information and resources. So I think the more people share, the more you realize you're not alone in what you're going through.
It's, you'd be surprised. And I have a lot of Instagram friends who I've never met. And I was like, those are like besties. Right. Because they understand, they understand what you're going through without ever like meeting you. And like, even like when I'm in the hospital, sometimes like Colin, they're like sending Starbucks gift cards and like, are you okay?
Yeah. And you're like, no, but I'm getting through.
Yeah.
What are the best ways for people to find you and get in touch with you? And what do you want parents to know who are learning about and navigating the NICU in their early journey?
Can we back up? There's a question I didn't finish answering.
Yes, absolutely. For sure.
You had mentioned kind of transition like back when we first got to NICU, how that happened. So I actually lived in the Ronald McDonald House for 2 weeks or 2 months. I lived in the Ronald McDonald House for 2 months while Colin was in the NICU before I transitioned back to work. So it was like in DC, and they would pay for me to like one free like round trip Uber back and forth to like the hospital. The rooms were spacious. The bathrooms were clean. They fed me. And it was like you built like community in the house with some of the other families. Okay. And they would willingly like just share your stories. And it's like some of them were like more heartbreaking than like your own. And I still wonder like where these people are today. And I just pray like that their babies are okay.
The Ronald McDonald houses sometimes are on campus, right, at a hospital, and sometimes off campus. But what you're making me think is I wish there was a Ronald McDonald reunion, almost like there are for NICUs too.
I think they said, so I just I just set up a thing where like a bunch of my friends, we just went and we like cooked a meal, like a Sunday dinner for the family. And I guess they're starting like a Facebook group that you can like chat with, but I don't think they have like a reunion.
I wonder if as your podcast and your kind of stories get shared, if people will end up finding you and being like, I know her face, I know her voice, I met her before. And if people will start coming out of the woodwork. Because those are people you never forget, for sure. It's that bonding. And you're making Sunday dinners at the Ronald McDonald House. You're doing that too?
I did in honor of Colin turning 5.
Okay. So what did you guys do? What did you guys do to celebrate Colin?
So he had a friend at the DC Children's Museum. So all of his little friends were renting out like a room in the basement. of the, well, I guess not the basement, but it's in the basement of the museum. And all of his kids, all his little friends played. It was like, they have maybe like 14 little friends there and their families, and half of them were like NICU babies. And so a lot of times the NICU, if they find a family who want to talk to someone and their story is like more in line with mine, the attendees will like reach out, like, hey, can you talk to this family? So there's actually a little boy who is born on Colin's birthday a year later, same history, same brain bleed, same side weakness, like almost everything identical. They were at the party. There were like a lot of people that we were in the NICU together or came later.
What are some of your favorite parts of being Colin's mom and Vincent's mom too?
So if it wasn't for Colin and I've been through everything else, like I would probably be on an island selling margaritas, like somewhere remote in the world, like nobody would be able to find me. Colin is what gives me the strength to kind of wake up and keep going. He was the one that got me through like my husband's death. Because it's like you have this little person with this bright eyes, bright smile. Like, okay, Mom, what are we going to do today? Like, we can't just sit here. And he kind of gave me purpose because he still needed to be taken care of. We still needed like all of these. Like he follows with like 17 different, either between specialists and therapists and like everything else.
Yeah.
So, and it's just like everything that he's gone through, and he still wakes up giggling like 90% of the time.
I love that.
Yeah. He's had, surgeries, and he's been inside the hospital more than any kid should ever have to be, but he's still so full of life. And every day, like he, like I said, they said he wasn't going to be able to walk, talk, eat, see, blah, 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 blah. He's 5. He can read, he can spell. He's learning how to ride a bike. He's
my gosh, Colin.
Like before he even went to pre-K 3, he already knew how to spell his name. He already knew his shapes, colors, letters, like all of this stuff. And so I always send the NICU like videos of Colin like reading and stuff like.
Oh man. And I know that's what keeps them going for sure.
It's like, make sure you bring them back. Make sure you bring them back. So I think that kind of changed their perspective too. Because either one of the attendants told me, we followed up like with this particular provider, like outpatient. And it was one day. So I live 2 hours outside of DC with traffic. And we would have, like when Colin first came home, we were driving up to DC every Thursday. I still drive there every Thursday, but we're not stacked like 4 appointments every Thursday. This was appointment 3 out of 4. It's already like the second or third building. And I asked this particular provider, like, what do I need to do to make sure that Colin walks? And they tell me, well, you shouldn't expect for him to walk. I was like, but I do.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, I can't tell you what to think.
Oof.
And I wish I would have said so much many more words, but I probably would have got kicked out of the building.
It's hard, like when you're met with that, it's hard to know how to respond. Like it's almost shocking.
It's like, how dare you? Because if you didn't think that all you had to say was, in order to give him the best opportunity of walking, you just need to do X, Y, and Z.
Right.
It changes the whole focus of the conversation. And then fast forward a couple of years, I bring Colin back, and he is walking with this little walker. And it's like, oh, he's got it. I was like, I want to do you remember what you told me?
Yeah. Well, especially like you as a provider yourself, you know how to navigate some of those tougher situations and how the weight that a provider's words can carry for a family lasts forever.
Yeah. I was like, I never talk to people like that.
Yeah. I had a mom on a podcast a couple years back, and she really gave me this kind of like no limits attitude. It's that the limits for our kids are only those that we set in our mind, that there are no real limits. And that if we just keep saying there's no limits, giving them every opportunity, giving the resources, there's nothing that they can't do. And I love that perspective.
So what helps me? And so that first person that I saw when I first saw Colin, the occupational therapist that was at the bedside with her, she told me, Ashley, push aside all of the predictions that the doctors have given you. Push it to the side. Your only job is to love Colin and give him the necessary tools, and he will show you what he's capable of. And that stuck with me the whole 6 months in the NICU, and then 4.5 years later, because it takes the pressure off for you. Like what Colin's capable of, I'm not in control of. As long as I give him, as long as I done my best. Like he has a whole therapy room in the basement full of every piece of equipment that I've seen the therapist use on him that I think is worth anything. He has it, right? So if he's only able to reach a certain ceiling or whatever, it's not because of me. It's because I've given him every tool. And so it's like, there's nothing more that I can do.
That's so good to think about. And it's so true. It's letting go of the control of things that you really have no say over. But what you do control is how much you love him, what you can find resources for him. And I think that's a good message, and especially for NICU parents in the beginning when you can't do much of anything. You can write things down in your notebook and be a really good historian. You can do your best to attend rounds if it's possible, but sometimes it's just not even possible to be there. You can, tell the nurses, like you did, tell the nurses what they should know about Colin and what makes him special, what makes him different. Those are all things that you can do to set him up for success.
And read to him daily.
Yeah. Do you have any special books that you remember from that time?
I have Loved You Since Forever by Hoda from
the Today Show.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, love Hoda. Oh, she's great. Well, I'm so grateful to you, Ashley, for being who you are and sharing what you've shared, some of the toughest times, but you're a true light. I can see it honestly through the screen right now. And I can't wait to share your podcast, share all the goodness that you have, share if you post Colin's giggle. I have to go through and look through your videos. I need to hear that if that's the sound. Do you have any other questions or quotes or any other topics that you wanted to catch on before we talk about where to find you?
I would say like the biggest thing that I've had to learn, one, people think that the hardest part is being in the NICU, and that's just the beginning. It's coming home, it's trying to figure out systems that work for you, because just because something worked for one family doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for you. And it's like the real advocating starts after discharge. It's so hard to kind of navigate DME companies, insurance companies. Like if I have to call the hospital billing department for error that they did one more time. And it's like, those are the things that they don't prepare you for once you get ready to get discharged. And then never take a person's word the first time. Like when it comes to stuff like this, because I've known that there's programs that existed and you call, the first person will say, that doesn't exist. And in your heart of hearts that it does. Like, do not take their word for it. Keep going. Like I had an instance where Colin is on this, in order for Colin needs home health nursing for at nighttime, or especially when I was working full time. And he was on my husband's insurance and my insurance. Neither one of them covered home health care nursing. So I had to get him Medicaid. And once he was going to get discharged from the NICU, we were going to get cut off because of income. And so we met with this family who has a son with special needs, and they told us about this program. And I called, and she was like, okay, make sure you apply for this version of it before he's discharged. And so I hurry up, filled out the application, got the NICU to sign, worked out smooth. We got approved like a week or two before he was discharged. And then, once he comes home, you have X amount of days to call social services to be like, hey, he's home. So of course I waited till like 2 days before the time. But by then his new case manager was like, okay, Ashley, you're going to get this bridge letter. And you're going to go down to social services and you're going to say, hey, I need to apply for this program. So it's going to bridge you from one program to the next so you don't lose, their Medicaid. And so, I call off from my job like, hey, I'm going to be late. I need to go to this program. I need to go to social services. And I'm there super early. Some guy walks by at the time. I didn't know he worked there and made a smart comment about me being there early. I'm like, whatever. I'm just going to. So I get there, I go to the desk and I'm like, hey, I'm here to apply for this program for my son. And the lady looks at me and was like, no program exists. You just need to get health insurance. Ma'am, my son has 2 health insurances. I need to apply for this program. She was like, okay, let me call someone. She calls someone, comes back. And she's like, ma'am, no such program exists. You need to get health insurance. You just need to get health insurance. Now I'm getting mad. Ma'am, my son has 2 Blue Cross and health insurance. Like, that's not it. And then she calls the guy who made the smart comment before as he was walking by in the lobby. And so I'm in the middle of this lobby with the guy who I know doesn't care anything about me. Yeah. Telling him my program. He's just looking at me. Program doesn't exist. So now I'm really mad. So I pull up the email. I'm at the desk. I'm like, ma'am, this case manager said I need to come and I need to apply for this program. And I'm just repeating the same thing in just different tones. Yeah. He's like, okay, hold on. She picks up the phone 5 minutes later. She's like, okay, he's approved. You'll get a letter in the mail. So those are the stories. Like,
oh my God, why does it have to be hard?
So hard. And those are the stories that I want people to know. Like, a lot of times you call, the first person does not know anything.
Yeah.
So don't take their word for it. Because had I walked out, what would I have done? I would have had to quit my job to stay home with my kid.
Yeah. It makes me feel the same way about the hospital too, because it's a good point, because there's so many travel nurses, so many nurses covering other people's shifts, so many doctors who maybe work at 4 different places, and you may ask a question, they may not know the answer. You can ask somebody else the same question and ask somebody, you know what I mean? It's these things that not everybody knows about every single thing. And that is, I'm so glad you brought up that point, because you're right. It is so important to ask 3 or 4 times and then maybe go. But how frustrating. It makes me crazy that you even had to like go up there after getting discharged from the NICU, that you had to get in your car, walk up to a social services place to advocate for this, get told, oh, I'm sorry.
And I really like for the people who would have taken that lady's word at value and left, or don't even have the type of doubt where they can be like, I'm coming in late. Like, what do these people do?
What do you do?
Mm-hmm. It's just like, that's another reason why I like to share the tips that I've learned. Like, I'm a healthcare provider. Like, if I'm having these troubles navigating the system, like, what does the average person?
Well, it's so necessary, because it's not just the emotional journey that it's being a NICU parent. It's these very big, important details. Like, I was just talking with you before we started recording that you've been on the phone with insurance today. You know, like, you're always having to do these things. And if you can find a tip from somebody else who's done it before, like, let's share it.
And like, taking care of your kid is the easy part. It's the other stuff that makes it hard.
Yes.
It's the insurance and the pharmacy, and like, that's what makes it hard. Like, if you can just take care of your kid, yes, they have, extra needs, special needs, but if you had every piece of equipment that you needed come to the door, yes, life wouldn't be perfect, but it wouldn't be as hard.
Yeah.
Like, your kid has a G-tube. Why is it some insurances only give you half the amount of bags that you need? If your kid is over 3 and need diapers, like, why does not every insurance cover the diapers?
It's so broken. It's so broken. We need that magic wand to come and fix that.
Those are the frustrating parts. Like,
it's frustrating.
Colin has he has a lot of issues, but in terms of like that, yes, I have to fight, but every piece of equipment he's needed, he's gotten, and every family can't say the same. And that's what breaks my heart. Like,
yeah, same.
So I'm just like, but if anything I can do to make your journey easier, I'll try.
I think you are. I think just by sharing what you've been through and these little anecdotal stories that aren't little, but they're big things. And it'll make somebody ask that question the second time, the third time, the fourth time, until they know that they get the answer that they know it should be. Well, Ashley, thank you so much for your time today, and tell your mom thanks for holding down the fort so I could talk with you and meet with you. Tell us where to find your podcast and how to find you on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or wherever you do your thing.
So I have a Facebook, but I primarily am on Instagram. It's
same.
hard. But Instagram, it's a NICU world. And so there I share most of like Colin's journey, the things that have worked for us. My podcast Instagram is Ask a NICU Mama Podcast 2024. They made me, Instagram make you keep adding stuff.
Yes.
And so the podcast is on all major podcast platforms. And then I have one more. It's On the Journey to Healing. And that's when I talk about like all of my stuff, like dealing with the trauma of pregnancy loss, becoming a widow, and then raising kids with complex medical needs, all within a 4-year span, and how I survived that. So that's on there. The website is www.nicuworld.com. Okay.
Awesome. Where do you stand on your book?
It should be going to print in like 1 week.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it's done. The page, it's illustrated. It's a children's book. We're just doing like the final touches of like the font and stuff.
Amazing. I can't wait to see it. What's the name of your book?
It's the NICU World.
It's a NICU World. I should have known.
So hopefully it's the first in like a 4 to 5 book series. So
I love it. Well, I can't wait to read it and share it. And thank you so much for spending your time with me today. And I appreciate you being exactly who you are.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you. Tell Lindsay, thank you for reaching out.
I will, for sure. Thank you all so much for listening to Child Life on Call. If you head to our website, childlifeoncall.com, you're going to find all sorts of stuff there for parents, professionals, healthcare providers, child life specialists, no matter who you are. Actually, when you just go to our homepage, it'll help you direct to exactly where you need to go. On that, you'll find opportunities and PDUs for child life specialists. Parents, we've got a starter kit for you. And clinicians, we even have a clinician course, which teaches you how to be a confident and capable caregiver in pediatrics. We're so grateful that you're here. Please DM us on Instagram. And like I mentioned, when you rate and review this podcast, it helps other families be able to find us. So let's keep doing that. And I will see you again here next week.